We begin with Trump DOJ's in crisis, though. And remember, much of what Donald Trump says and admits in public involves Watergate-level confessions if they were only in private. And he has turned that into something of a kind of political propaganda art, because what he has already admitted is a scandal for the DOJ in pursuing his perceived foes. Now we have more detail about the DOJ faced with the crisis of Trump's own making. After their own career prosecutors did not find evidence to indict Jim Comey, they are still considering whether to indict James Comey, of course, the former FBI director, and there's new details about all of this.
Donald Trump promised revenge, and now we're seeing what that looks like. His Department of Justice is in crisis, trying to prosecute his enemies, even when the evidence isn't there. Tonight, we break down Trump's obsession with James Comey, the DOJ's own doubts, and what looks like a full-blown political hit job.
Prosecutors have already presented the new U.S. attorney with a written record about why there was not evidence to charge Comey in the first place, meaning they already looked into this and there isn't a case. Now, that could come back to haunt this Trump White House if they force a case which their own review found wasn't valid.
Think about that. Watergate-level confessions. Trump doesn't just whisper revenge in private, he shouts it out loud. And now his DOJ is considering an indictment of James Comey, even though prosecutors already reviewed the evidence and found no case.
Trump pushed the Attorney General to bring the charge against Comey, and that, according to the Journal reporting, whatever you think of Ms. Bondi and her conservative history, as a legal matter, to the extent that she may be looking at actual evidence or whether the case is winnable, quote, she's expressed reservations about the Comey case. This is a scandal from the DOJ to the White House. And while I know we live in a time where Donald Trump pretends everything's going exactly as he planned or just throws different words out and is accompanying with other distractions, we have indications that he knows this is bad, and it looks bad because he is misleading about, or at least disagreeing with, what voluminous reporting and his own posts online have showed.
Translation: the DOJ looked at it, saw nothing, and closed the book. But Trump is still demanding charges anyway. Even his loyal allies are starting to question it.
I think I'd be allowed to get involved if I want, but I don't really choose to do so. I can only say that Comey's a bad person.
Fact check. False on the involvement. Donald Trump is involved. That's according to his own words, prior stated through his voice, through his mouth, and recently posted online. He is involved. When you are the leader of an organization, let alone the entire United States government, and you publicly say, directed at an employee like Bondi, that she should go after, probe, or get the indictments done of Comey and Schiff and others, you're involved, obviously. So he's denying it now today because the heat is on and it looks bad.
And what does Trump do when cornered? He denies involvement, even though his own posts and statements prove otherwise. Watch this.
We've updated a chart that could come out of any tin pot, banana republic, autocratic agenda. Because as you see from the upper left, you have members of the opposition party indicted. That case goes on. The second one against the mayor, the charges were already dropped. Again, as I say, a reminder that if you just throw complete baseless charges at the wall, they won't last. Mr. Comey in the middle was already interviewed on a different case, the seashells issue. If you remember that MAGA era thing, they were making a big deal out of a social media post he did of seashells that they said was a type of threat. That was why he was interviewed by the Secret Service. He's obviously being also pursued on this other matter as they review the testimony I mentioned. If you look in the lower right, John Bolton, a lifelong Bush neocon conservative. He was considered too controversial and conservative to get confirmed in a prior administration, served under Trump. But now he's also on that critics' enemies list, along with many other people here that Trump has publicly agitated to probe or indict. This is not lawful. If they prove that the cases were only brought or indicted because Trump personally demanded it, that's selective prosecution. It's not legal in America. Judges will continue to toss it. There's also reporting that he has his sights on the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, who's also in that chart I showed you. You may remember she brought a civil fraud case against Trump. And legally, I can tell you, it wasn't a perfect case. It didn't involve ever trying to jail Trump. It was civil in nature. And the system grinded forward. People heard evidence. He lost the first round, but got some better treatment on appeal over the size of the fine. That's how things work in America.
That's false. Trump is involved. He's publicly called on his DOJ to go after Comey, Adam Schiff, and even state officials like Letitia James. This isn't law. This is a revenge tour.
During the first Trump administration, you and I used to talk a lot about Trump's conduct that we would categorize as lawful but awful. Now we're in unlawful territory. That's the shift that we're experiencing, just whatever we are 9 months into this administration. And so when prosecutors have a case, particularly a complicated, difficult case that they're going to decline prosecution in, most offices require them to write a memo documenting that declination, so that if there's ever a question down the road, somebody can go back and say, this was the fault. This was the evidence that they didn't have, or perhaps they didn't think a crime had been committed, whatever the reason. It sounds to me, and we don't know, we're basing this on reporting, but it sounds like prosecutors in the Eastern District of Virginia wrote a memo declining to prosecute the case, not just because they didn't think they could get a conviction at trial, but because they didn't believe they had enough evidence to obtain an indictment, a much lower burden of proof.
This looks like something out of a banana republic, not the United States. Trump is using the DOJ like his personal hit squad, targeting critics, journalists, even comedians like Jimmy Kimmel. That's the shift. Trump isn't just bending norms anymore. He's breaking the law to pursue his enemies. This is bigger than Comey, bigger than Bondi, bigger than Letitia James. This is about whether America still has a Justice Department or just Trump's Department of Revenge. What do you think? Is this justice or dictatorship in disguise? Drop your thoughts below.